Hello everybody, Lawrence Fleming again. Well, I'm walking a different path back over to my normal spot. I didn't feel like walking on the road today, so we're taking a hiking trail. Keep it a little bit interesting. I've got a lesson plan prepared, so we're just going to go over to the site and I'll open the Bible there, but basically you can see what the world is doing, what the devil's doing. He's attacking foundational things. And the world's attacking foundational things. They need to figure out a way to have another government-wide takeover, like they did with the Big C. But they can't do it with the United States because they've already done it, and the courts have come in and said you cannot restrict the church. We have a constitution that protects us. Our founding fathers were Christian. This was started as a Christian nation, despite what the liars would tell you. And there's no such thing as separation of church and state in any of our legal documents. They're in letters where they were discussing how they can do this without infringing upon rights. They just come from Western Europe, England, and the surrounding countries for the most part, where the Church of England ruled, and they wanted away from that. The government and the church melded together, and it was not good for either one. So they wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. So that's why it's in our Constitution. You shall make no law for or against religion. It's taboo. That doesn't say you can come in and stop religion. It doesn't say you can come in and promote it. That's fine. Individuals can, but a country can't. And the people that hate God, that work for the devil, twist that all the time. So you've got to pay attention. We're not supposed to forsake God. We're supposed to talk about Him, teach about Him. It should be in our school. I think there's a joke out there that says, why don't we have the 10 Commandments in our courthouses anymore? Well, it's not good to set up a hostile environment for the lawyers and judges. But if they were honest, which they're not, there'd be 10 Commandments in every government building. Because basically our laws are built on that, our Constitution is. But they're going to be taking that down here soon. Like I said, they can't bring back another government-controlled episode here using the Big C or anything like it, because we've already had enough of it. They tried closing churches, it won't work, so they're going to have to come up with some other way to take the United States down. We're the big stumbling block because we've been a Christian nation for so long. And even those that don't really appreciate it are benefiting from it, even though they may not accept it. So, we're going to see that, if you can take down a very well-known public minister or preacher, you can take them down publicly, that's great. Satan loves to do that. If you can take down a church, or get a church to come over to your side and start talking the way you talk, if you're a woke person or whatever you want to be. But they want the timeline sped up. They originally came up with the 30-20, reverse the numbers. Got to say things like this to keep on talking on these social media sites. Charles Schwab, and I mispronounce it on purpose, would love for it to be able to take place right now. He's getting old. He doesn't want to wait any longer. And a lot of these guys are getting old. All of them that are involved in this. Bill Gates is involved in this. King Charles is involved in this. They all went to Charles Schwab's school on how to take over the world. So they're all graduates. And there's many more that have done this. They already have a plan, and it's being carried out slowly. As soon as it's done and they've got basic control, I think that's when the Antichrist is going to step in and take over. But they have to get control. So that's the timing that we're looking at for a rapture. The Antichrist is not going to show himself until there's a world that's set up for him, and that's what he's working with the harlot for. When they're referenced, it's the 7 heads and the 10 horns. That's the beast riding the back of the harlot. And he doesn't like playing second fiddle. And he's going to kill the harlot. I've talked about this. That's all coming. All right, I'm going to get set up here and not make you go through me juggling the camera around while I try to set it up on the tripod and all that. I've got my Bible next to me, and I'm going to go ahead and get the Bible set up with the verses, and we'll go into a Bible study. And at the end, I will throw some video of some of my campsite stuff around just so you can see it. Not very long. To some of you, it gets boring, so I've done long hikes, and I don't get as many views. But I have people that, thank me for them, but I don't get as many views. So most of you want the meat of the study and not the, well, I guess I should go to a cake. You want the cake, but not the icing, or very little icing anyway. That sounds good. I maybe make a cake later on. I can make a really cool chocolate cherry cake in a Dutch oven. And it's easy to do. I'm working out the details of a pot roast. I'm going to do that first because I can do that inside or out. I brought my electric skillet out. With the weather being bad like it is, I'm not going to be able to cook outside much. All the wood is wet. It would be difficult, and I could get right in the middle of it and have it start raining. So I'm probably going to have to cook inside. So I may use the electric skillet. The only problem is I can't run my heater on the same circuit, so I have to rig something up because it's gotten cold. If you want a job that has no high expectations, be a weatherman. They can predict the big stuff. They can say there's a tornado coming to you now that they couldn't in the past. That's really great. But they're not real good about predicting far out. They can say there's a storm coming, but they can't say it's going to rain 2 inches in this city and 1 inch in this city. They're not real good at that. And they're not real good at the temperature. We were supposed to be in the 60s today, and it feels like it's dropping. It feels like it's in the 40s. That's why I'm bundled up again to do this. Okay, let me get my camera set up and we'll get into our study. See you in a bit. Okay, I think we're set up as long as the wind doesn't blow. I'm trying to get the thing up as high as I can because the seat's at a certain height. I'm on my swing. I love to be on a swing. I think better and I talk better when I'm moving. That's why I like to do a lot of my hikes and talk. It helps to clear the mind, to keep it shaking around up there, rattling around. Okay. Well, we can see all the stuff going on in the world that he's trying to do to disrupt everything. And one of the things I get a lot of times is, why do we have all these denominations? Why do we have all these things? You can't start teaching lies if you're based on a core, solid belief system. You've got to splinter it and get them further and further away, and then you can start introducing lies, falsehoods, whatever you want to call them. Demons get in there, and you get the doctrines of demons. And we're going to talk about that. We know and we're told in the Bible that the way is narrow to get into heaven. It's like the joke again. I use a joke, and I don't recommend the songs, but the joke is good. Why do we have a stairway to heaven but a highway to hell? It's because one way's narrow and one way's wide. The wind is blowing. I can feel it. It's only like 3 or 4 miles an hour, but that's enough to bring chill to a bone. Okay, we're going to turn to Matthew 7. I got 3 different verses here. And just a real quick one. This one's not even part of my lesson, but I'm going to just throw this out here. It's always good to have context. And since we're in Matthew, we can assume that most of what we're hearing is from Jesus. And this is from Jesus. So this is Matthew 7:1. This is not part of my lesson, but we're going to go ahead and read it anyway. Judge not, that you may not be judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And it gives us, why do you have a speck in your eye and you're focused on or a speck in your brother's eye when you're not seeing the log in your own? I should have just read it instead of trying to paraphrase it, but it's right there following this. Be careful how you judge others. You should be forgiving of others. It's part of our daily prayer. Forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. It's another way of saying sin. Okay, we're going to go to Matthew 7:13. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who will go by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who will find it. You see, we're trying to reach the world, but most of the world is not going to find that narrow gate. We want to be able to find the individuals that are in the packs and pull them out and get them out and get them introduced. The majority of this world, just like the majority of the world of Noah's time, and we're told this is like the time of Noah, the majority of the people are going to miss salvation. And it's a willful choice of theirs. That's what you've got to understand. Nobody who has a propensity to accept the truth of Jesus is going to be lost. Only those that reject Jesus. That's why we're still here, to reach those ones that are scattered out there in the world. That whose name is in the book of life would be another way of putting that. We're not going to reach everyone. There are those that are doing perfect right now. They think they are. These rich people that are running the world right now, they think they're doing everything what's right. They're setting up the world to run it according to their Satan-given utopia. Well, it won't work. We know it won't work. We're told it won't work, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take over the world to put it in the way that Satan would run things. But the world doesn't know that. And the world won't believe that if you tell it to them. Like I said before, and I've said it many times, when Jesus sent out his people out there, he said, go house to house, go to everybody. If they invite you in and want to talk, go in and have dinner with them or whatever and talk to them. If they don't, wipe the dust off your feet and move on. We don't have time to waste on a world who is shunning God and shunning Jesus. We want to get those that are out there that are open. We can pray for everybody. God doesn't want anybody to die, to fail, to go into the fiery pit. Everybody on this earth has eternity ahead of them. The only question is, where? Okay. I want to skip down a little bit down to chapter 7:21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father. Got to turn the page. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then he will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. You just can't use his name. You got to have Jesus in your heart and your soul. You've got to accept the free gift of salvation. If you don't do that, works will not get you to heaven. That's what these are, works, doing things using his name. You could own and run a, soup kitchen for the poor. You could operate on people with, if you're a doctor with no money and do it as a charity. But if you're not doing it, read our love chapter, you're a noisy gong if you're not doing it because of the love of Christ, because you have Christ in you. You have to have that first. Then you can have works. But works alone won't get you to heaven. And we're going to go down to 7:24. Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken them to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on the house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on a rock. These are Jesus' words talking to us. This is the Son of God giving us his insight into how to live in this world. Take heed to it. Now, he's speaking to the Jews in all the Gospels, pretty much. So you're not going to find rapture really talked about in the Gospels, because he's speaking to the Jews. He's the King of the Jews. He's the Lion of Judah. And that's what they were looking for when he was here. They weren't looking for the lamb that had to be sacrificed, because they missed it. Because the leaders of the time started writing outside the Bible of their day. They didn't have the New Testament, but they had the Old. And Christ has talked about in the Old Testament. But they started writing their little commentaries outside. Kind of like the Book of Mormon. And they skip over him coming back as a lamb because they want him to come back and take over and get rid of Rome and be the king and destroy Rome so they can have their free country. They weren't deserving of it, but they wanted it. The Talmud and the Mishnah are commentaries written by the various priests throughout the ages, the rabbis and the like. And they missed a lot of things, and they didn't refer back enough to the original. They tried to explain using opinion or belief systems that they created. It doesn't work. I talk a lot here, but if I'm using the scripture, you best pay attention, and I highly recommend that you take notes, write these dates or these names or whatever I'm talking about down, verses, whatever I use as a reference, and look it up. If I give you a Bible reference and you've got a Bible, and who should be going through life without a Bible? Look them up and read them. Read the verses around them. Context is always important. If I give you a date, look it up. If I give you a name, look it up. You have the greatest reference tool of all ages in Google. Now, it may not be accurate either. Be careful. Wikipedia is self-editing to a degree. But if it gives you a Bible reference to look it up, if it talks about it, you can follow the rabbit trails wherever they go. If they lead to the Bible, you've got something good. If they don't contradict the Bible, it's good. It takes time and practice. So if you're not familiar how to do it, start doing it now. Okay, on to our next verse. We're going to go to 1 Timothy. Trying to use my bookmarks in the wind. Okay, we're going to start in chapter 4, verse 1 of 1 Timothy. Now the Spirit expressly says that in the later days some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, Well, we studied a while back, I don't know, a video or two ago, that we know we're in the last days. It says so. So anything that's in here that's talking about, in the end times or last days, it should apply from their time on. Now, we know we're in the last days. We're in the last days of the last days. I think that's tomorrow's. That would be the video coming up after whatever you've just watched. I think that's what I'm talking about. I've already recorded it. It's already uploaded. I think this follows it. But anyhow, doctrines of demons, speaking lies of hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron, basically means they've been programmed to think the way they do. You're not going to change them in one quick sitting. You're not going to recommend one verse to them. They're going to have a counter verse for every verse you throw at them. They've been programmed, propagandized. It's been seared into their brain with a hot iron. Having their conscience seared with a hot iron, for forbidding to marry. They're trying to do that now. That's what this new marriage thing is all about. Anybody can marry anything. It doesn't matter. Congress they've got people from both sides voting on this, and our president has signed it. The Protection of Marriage Act, right there, is a lie. It destroys marriage, which is what they want. They want to reduce the population. They tried it with abortion, and we've put a stop to that for the time being. It's still going on, unfortunately, but we've put a big stop to it. So if they can't get them by killing babies, we'll get them by having sex with other people so that with the same sex, so that way you can't make babies. That's all it is. It's another lie and distortion from the devil. Okay. Commanding to abstain from foods which God created. We saw Peter in his vision about eating foods offered to idols. There's nothing wrong with the food. If you're offering it to an idol, that's the wrong. But if you're eating food that was offered to idols and you had nothing to do with the offering, it's okay. He says if it causes your brother to stumble, don't do it. Which goes for a lot of things that the world is telling us we can't do. If it's something God created, it's okay. They want to get rid of beef because of flatulence. It's affecting the world. Well, I'm cold today. I want global warming. Okay. God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. For every creature of God is good, and nothing is to be refused if it is received with thanksgiving. We just had the holiday of Thanksgiving. I hope everybody ate their fill, and if you didn't, I pray that someday you will, or that you have in the past, so you have a memory of it. It's a good memory to be able to fill your belly. It's going to be coming hard-pressed to be able to do that. This may be the last season of being able to eat a large gathering of people with food. You're not going to be able to do this next year and the year after. Now, hopefully we're going to be out of here soon. But I've been telling you to prep, and I'm still telling you that. Even at the high prices now, they haven't reached the maximum. Have you spent a day's wage for a loaf of bread yet? Well, that's coming. It's in the Bible. Okay. I'm going to turn to John 14. And verse 6. We've talked about the narrow gate. John 14, verse 6. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now, who is he talking to? I'm going to go back to 14:1 and start from there. It's always good to have the context. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many. It says the word mansions, but it's really many rooms. We've got a large mansion in which we're going to have a glorious room or series of rooms. I don't know what we're going to have to live in. Jesus has been gone for a long time. This place should be ready for us now. If it were not so, I would tell you so. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go now, you know where I'm going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going, and how we can know the way. So Thomas asked him. And again in verse 6, Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. All these religions, all these variations, and there's world religions too, whether it's the Muslims who have a false religion. It's a false Christianity. It's not going to lead them to heaven, unfortunately. And we have Buddhists who just believe we're just going to keep coming back as cows and other animals and keep living the life over until we get it right. No, there's one way. There's one life. Now, there may be some that come back, or two witnesses maybe, but they're the rare exception, and they're tools of God. And now I want to go to 2 John. They're in the very back. It's Revelation, Jude, 2 John, 1 John. They're small books. And I'm going to read verse 7. And because it switches pages, I'm getting my page ready. Okay. For many deceivers have gone out into the world and do not confess Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an antichrist. Look to yourselves that we do not lose those things that we work for, but that we may receive a full reward. Don't believe the lies. There is an antichrist coming, and he will appear to the world and to many religions as the Messiah, as the Christ. Same word, different language. Don't be confused by the fact that we get all this stuff in different languages. Harpazo is caught up. That's what we're looking for the rapture. But in Latin, it's rapturo, or that's where we get the word rapture. There's people that don't believe in the word rapture because they say it's not in the Bible. It is. It's just the Latin Bible. Most people don't read Latin anymore. That was the common language that everybody spoke back in the time when they didn't speak any other language. They at least had Latin as a common language. During the time of Christ that he was here, Greek was the common language, the language of scientists and that. Hebrew was there, but it was kind of going out, and it really wasn't the true Hebrew. It was Aramaic that they picked up in Babylon. It's a variation. If you try to write or read Hebrew, there's different ways to write it. There's a block version. There's the text version that you see in textbooks, which is a cleaned up version of the block version of writing, like printing in English. If you're going to print big capital letters, that's one way. But if you're going to do script, that's another way. We do the same thing. And Hebrew is the same way. How are we doing on time? I'm going to give you a quick Hebrew primer. The first two letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and the Greek for that matter, but the Hebrew are Aleph and Bet. Put them together. Aleph, Bet, alphabet. And in Greek, Alpha, Beta. You have an old supermarket. I don't know if they still have those out west. We used to have a supermarket chain called Alpha, Beta. But Aleph and Bet. Aleph, symbol-wise, if you go back to ancient Hebrew, the First Temple Hebrew, you will find that they were very picturesque. Aleph is a symbol of an ox, and that's his horns, the crooked horns that go up. And if you look at how you would write it, it's a dash and then boom, boom in the block letter form. And the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Bet. It's like a house. It's a top and a down, and then an underline is one way of blocking it. The underline goes all the way underneath in the writing version of blocking. In the text version, it's just down in a closure. And then you put a dot in the middle, makes it a B, bet. If you take away the dot, it's V, vet. It's the same character, same consonant. It's either a B or a V, depending on whether that little dot's there. And if you can write those two, you can write a very important word in the Bible. You do the aleph and the bet, followed by an aleph. Abba. Abba, Father. So there you go. You know your first Hebrew word. And the rest of the Hebrew is that way. Unfortunately, we don't have any Hebrew manuscripts that carried over from the New Testament. We don't even have any complete Greek manuscripts, Greek letters. Paul wrote a lot of letters. We have the epistles, we have the Gospels. We don't have any complete ones. We haven't found any, at least, because Dionysius had them all burned. That was a guy I couldn't remember before. I just block him out of my mind. I don't like him. It wasn't until Constantine came along and made it legal to be a Christian, at least for a little while. And we're still coming off of the early times of Nero, who needed a scapegoat, another biblical term. He caused Rome to burn, but he blamed it on the Christians. And he continued on until he died. But then they were able to feed Christians to the lions because of that lie. Okay, see, there's a lot of history. It's real important that you learn that there is history involved. You can't throw the Bible out because then you throw out history. And history is how we got here. And if you, another cliche, don't learn from history, you're bound to repeat it. And we're starting to repeat. We're getting ready to repeat the first couple of centuries of Christianity here. The harlot is going to have the blood of Christians on her. And it's not really a her, it's just kind of the way we associate it. All right. I'm going to throw some video at the end, just a little bit of my campsite and a little bit of walking, but not very much, just to kind of show you what I'm dealing with. My tent is broken and I'm having to work around it. But I came prepared because I had those clips with me that you see. I'm trying to figure out how to deal with it, but right now I'm getting by, and the tarp is keeping me dry, and because we have cold weather, the bugs are not out. So either way, I'm okay, and the snakes are not going to be out either. And the bigger animals they won't get in the little cracks that are in the door. You're seeing the video. All right. We're going to be meeting together real soon, but I can't give you a date. Paul was looking, so I tell you to be looking. We're watching for the rapture to happen any time. We're already into Revelation 12 because we've seen the signs. We've seen the sign of Revelation 12 in the sky. It was documented. And you can go and look that up if you need to know what it is. So that puts us in Revelation 12. What's the next thing in Revelation 12? Satan coming to earth with a third of his angels. That's the next thing. Are we going to recognize it? I don't know. We have a meteor shower coming up in a day or so. It might be the day of this release. I don't know. I'm still putting the whole month of December on high watch. But it could be next year or the year after. This is high watch. Next year will be even higher watch because the further away we get from Jesus being here, the higher the watch is. And we're in the last days. They were in the last days back then. Be watching. Don't be caught with your lamps empty. All right. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless. This is funny. The squirrels have been using my picnic table to eat on. Pine cones. You can see what's left. Here's an even better example. And these things, if they're in the trees above me, they fall down on my tarp. You can see they can be way up there That's a really cool picture, don't you think so? They can come down here. My tarp doesn't cover the full tent. I don't really need it to. All I need it to do is to cover the entrance and the one side over there. If I cover the whole thing, it would keep me from getting sunshine, which I want. But this is a view. I do have a fire pit, but I'm not going to use it right now because everything is wet. You can see the ground, how it's still wet, hasn't dried out. It's rained pretty much every day. We still have a 30% chance today. There's old trees in here. They just took down some not too long ago. Blessings. Okay, you can see how my tarp covers this side to keep the rain off of these, so I can open these windows and the one on this end so I don't feel cooped up if I have to stay inside. And you can see what I'm having to do right now because the zipper on my door is broken. I've got more clamps inside, but this right here is not even sealed. I got the zipper down here. That's the problem. It won't pull it together. Fortunately, with this weather, there's no bugs. And here's my Boost going in there that you guys helped me get that gives me cell signal. There has to be something to amplify, but if it does have it, I get to use it. So this is how I can, over time, if I have enough time, if I have a day and a night, I can upload a video from here. If I don't have any time, I got to go into town and find a hot spot, burning gas when I do that. Kind of all looks the same everywhere you go. I have a big tree down over here. Say, how big a tree? Well, as big as this one. You see we have moss on this side. There are pine trees. You can see them up in there. None of this little bitty grove right here, though.